It's a huge honour to be here today and to be part of the Lesbos dialogues. I've greatly enjoyed listening to the speakers today and hearing more about the context in which the refugees are living and learning whilst on the island. And I hope that what I'm going to talk to you about today will resonate with many of the things that you've heard already today and may also offer a practical and sustainable solution to some of the gaps that we've heard about, particularly in terms of early childhood development that Helen was just highlighting. So I'm going to talk to you about a project that I've been working with for the past 4 years. I started working on this project in 2013, and it's primarily in... Whoops, that's not the right one. Is there a highlighter on here? No? Okay, it's primarily in conjunction with onebillion, who are a not-for-profit based organisation in the UK, and they are software developers, they're app developers. Right, okay, I need to go back. And just to say that onebillion are completely independent of me. So I've been evaluating the effectiveness of their software. The programme is also being implemented in Malawi with VSO, and it's starting to be implemented in other countries with them as well. And whichever country I work with, I always work with a local university. The amount of knowledge that local educators bring to a program like this is just completely invaluable. And there's no way that you can do this work with any rigour without working with local universities. So my collaborator in Malawi is Anthony Chikida, who is sat in the audience here today with us. We've had a great time working together, and I've learned a huge amount about the context in Malawi. So our research project is funded by the Royal Norwegian Embassy, who are the main donors of the project that's taking place in Malawi. And we have a consortium of donors, including the Scottish Government, DFID from the UK, and UNICEF, and some other donors, Comic Relief, and a few others as well. But the project was really to address the global education crisis that's facing many, many countries around the world. And the photograph that you see there is a photograph of typical education in Malawi. That's a typical classroom in Malawi. It's one of the photos that we've taken. So this isn't refugee children. We're not talking about refugee camps here. We're talking about mainstream education in a low-income country. And the situation in Malawi has a lot of similarities with what you'll see and what we've been hearing about today in refugee camps. So the quality of education is probably a lot better in some of the refugee camps than it can be in Malawi. The standards are very, very poor. I think the figures from UNESCO say that 98% of pupils have only basic numeracy skills at primary school. Girls drop out of primary education very early. They tend to come to school for the first 2 years, and then they drop out and are back in the fields. The situation, as you can see, it's overcrowded and under-resourced classes. Malawi also suffers from, on the whole, poorly trained teachers or very variably trained teachers. So there will be some teachers working in the schools that have master's degrees, and there will be other teachers who have been literally told that they're going to be a teacher and will have received very little training at all. And we're up against one of the shortest school days in the world. So children go to school at 7:30 in the morning, and when we were running our study, they were leaving school at 10:30 in the morning. So you have an incredibly narrow window in which to educate these children, and with girls you've got on average a 2-year period to do it in. If Children leave primary ed without being able to count, without being able to read. It reduces their ability to operate effectively in their life. Malawi is a subsistence farming country mostly, but if they can't conduct basic numeracy skills, they can't sell their tomatoes at market, which means that they're very limited in what they can do. So this is a situation that we were facing. And we were particularly interested in vulnerable groups. So when I talk about vulnerable children, I'm thinking about those children who are particularly at risk of scholastic underperformance. So in low-income countries like Malawi, we're looking at 50% of the population, we're looking at girls. In more high-income countries, we're looking at children from high social deprivation areas, children with English as an additional language, or the host language that host country language that children find themselves in. So, in my context, English. Obviously, other countries, other languages. Children at risk or diagnosed as having learning difficulties or other special educational needs and disabilities. In Malawi, the special educational needs and disabilities tend to be those that are visible. So children who have obvious sensory impairments, such as vision loss or hearing loss, communication problems, so they're mute, or very physical neurodevelopmental disorders such as Down syndrome or cerebral palsy. But the children that get missed in those contexts are the children that have learning difficulties that are not very visible. So children with things like attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, and children with dyslexia, other problems. And also, for today's talk, focusing on children in conflict areas or displaced children on the move. So these are all vulnerable groups of children who, as Helen pointed out, have a right to quality education. And what we're looking at here is whether mobile technology can assist with that. So we're looking at innovation through technology. And this is one of our children in our project using a touchscreen tablet that we're implementing in Malawi. So we were interested in looking at a radical solution and using tablet technology in this situation I've just described is radical because there's a cost involved in it, and there's quite a high infrastructure cost, especially in a country like Malawi where there's very, very poor grid supply of electricity. Tony was telling me today that they have 22 hours of grid cutout at the moment in Malawi. So as an academic, he's got 2 hours when he can charge up his computer to conduct his work. And in many rural settings, there's no grid supply at all. So we've been looking to see whether digital technologies, combined with the appropriate infrastructure, can provide an alternative solution to that education crisis I've just described. And the thing that excites me about it, from a psychologist's perspective, is that mobile technology, coupled with with appropriate content, and this is the key thing that I would like to stress, it's not the device itself, it's the content that's really important. So if you have good apps, you can set up a situation where you've got very child-centered, individualized learning. You can create a one-to-one tailored individual instruction. And if that content is proven to be of high quality, then you can provide consistent quality education to all children wherever they are. And I think that's the point that I'd really like to stress, is the consistency of the quality of education means that it can equalize opportunities to children wherever they may be in the world. So you can deliver well-designed software, and ideally that software will be grounded in a solid and evidence-based curriculum. It's interactive, so it's keeping children engaged with the task. And if they have very clear objectives, children can progress through apps without the need of teachers being there to guide them through it. So picking up on the point that Helen was making at the end there, the apps that I've been working with enable children to work through them on their own basis without the need of specialist teachers. And children can repeat the information as much as they need, so it becomes self-paced learning. And that engenders an inclusive learning environment because you can have children of different ability levels all working at the same pace. At different paces, at their own pace, sorry. So the apps that I've been working with have been developed by onebillion, the charity onebillion. And onebillion are finalists. They're one of 5 teams in the Global Learning XPrize that's taking place at the moment in Tanzania. If you don't know about that competition, I suggest you Google it and take a look at it because it's incredibly exciting. And we've provided the evidence base for the effectiveness of these apps through independent evaluation. So you can see some of the content from the apps on the side, and you can see that they're very clear, very engaging stimuli. The apps are provided through handheld tablets or mobile phones. They work on Android devices as well as Apple devices. And they're based on the National Primary Curriculum for Mathematics that is used in the UK, and it's also used in a lot of African countries, including Malawi. They provide basic numeracy and literacy skills. Most of our work has been on the evaluation of the numeracy skills because those were the apps that were developed first, but we've done some recent studies on the literacy apps that onebillion have developed. And the beauty of the onebillion apps is that the maths apps are available in 50 different languages. So children can learn in their local language and they can access the same information that children in another country with a different language are learning in. So we've been conducting studies in Malawi where the children are learning in Chichewa, and we've been conducting studies in the UK where the kids are learning in English and they're having the same content. So as I said before, these apps provide an opportunity for self-paced, self-assessed, progressive, inclusive learning. They're self-assessed because they composed of a series of topics that are progressive in difficulty based on the national curriculum, and children have a chance to practice those topics. So a virtual teacher, Anna, talks to the children in their own language, demonstrates how to do a particular thing, then children have a go at doing it. They get formative feedback, both negative and positive, on every interaction that they do with the app, and then they have a chance to demonstrate that knowledge through a quiz. And when they pass the quiz, they move on to the next topic. So even without standardized assessments, you can look at learning through the number of quizzes that children pass. And they get a little certificate when they pass it and a quiz. And if you're in a classroom environment, that's celebrated. So there's cause for celebration as well, and social engagement that way. In Malawi, we're building purpose-built what we call learning centres. They're just a small classroom where we're housing the tablets, and the electricity supply is through solar panels on the roof. So it's a completely sustainable classroom that we're using there. Obviously, in the UK, we don't have that issue. It just goes into a normal classroom. So currently, we're running studies in all of these countries. So Malawi, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, Brazil. We've run studies in the Northern Territories, in Canada, and also in the UK. So we've been looking at very similar studies across low, medium, and high income countries, across 4 different continents. And we've been working with both mainstream children and children with special educational needs and disabilities. And we've been working with approximately 55,000 marginalised children. So that's the extent of the project at the moment. We haven't been assessing all of those children, but that's where the extent of which the project is implemented. And we've been combining both quantitative methodologies with qualitative methodologies. So the methodologies that Helen was talking about that she's been using to evaluate educational needs here in Lesbos, we've been looking at teachers' attitudes, we've been looking at infrastructure needs, and that we've been looking at focus groups on teachers who are not using this technology but are later on in the primary years, and looking at how, if we raise standards early in the first 2 years of education, what impact that will have on later education within the primary schools. So we've been doing a very detailed qualitative analysis, but we've also been looking quantitatively at children's learning gains with and without the technology. So we've been running randomized control trials where we've been taking groups of children, we've administered a standardized test to those children, and then half of the children get access to the technology, half get access to standard pedagogical practice. After a period of time, we then re-evaluate the children on the same standardized assessments, and we look at the difference in learning gains. So when I was asked to talk about this project, I thought, well, I can tell you about what we've been doing in Malawi, but actually it would make more sense to think about the implications for the refugee crisis that we're facing. And I've been working with the Nottingham Refugee Forum in my home city at home for a few years now, and we ran a scoping study with newly arrived families to look at the things that were important for them in terms of integration. And they highlighted that more than 40% of their weekly income that they receive from the UK government is spent on mobile technology. And that reiterates what Helen was saying about the importance of that mobile device. If you're going to grab anything after you've got the kids out, you're going to get your mobile phone. And that's because it keeps them in touch with their families at home and with their friends at home, but it also provides a way of integrating within the new country. So mobile devices are incredibly important to refugee families. It also provides an opportunity to capitalize on the fact that they have mobile devices as a way of providing education through apps that have been proven to be effective. One of the main issues in the UK is that children can stay out of school for a very long time before they're placed in a school environment. And as families are moved within the UK, when they first arrive, they can come into one city, they can be moved to another city, and then they can be moved on to another city. And so their education is disrupted until they are based in a city where they're going to remain. So something is needed that enables children to have consistent access to high quality education along that refugee journey, from leaving home through to being finally placed in a city and a new country where they're going to live. And what I'm suggesting here is that the mobile devices, coupled with good quality apps, can provide that vehicle. It can provide a consistent, high quality education for those children as they're progressing along that journey. So, as I've said already, the 1 billion maths apps are available in 50 different languages. And this is quite exciting for me because what it enables the opportunity for is for children to learn the skill, so learn the mathematics in their home language without having the need to have those additional learning requirements that Helen was talking about, of having to learn it in a different language as well. But once they've learnt that concept in their home language, you can then switch within the apps to learning it within their host country language. So by interleaving host and home language presentation, children can acquire the mathematical concepts and then learn those concepts in their host language. And This, I believe, will facilitate integration into the education system of the host language, especially if that host country is already using the same apps. And that could actually facilitate social integration as well. So I think that there's huge potential here with apps that are presented in different languages to really enhance the ease of that journey for children that are displaced. So at the moment, we haven't conducted those trials, but we are planning to do so. And we have the opportunity to work with a refugee camp in Malawi that borders Mozambique. I'm also setting up a new collaboration with the Karam Foundation to run these studies in a school in Jordan with Syrian refugees. And we're hoping to receive funding to fund a PhD studentship over the next 4 years in Nottingham to work with newly arrived families in Nottingham, where we will be scientifically testing that interleaving of languages. But I think that mobile technologies equate to mobile education, which equates to mobile learning for people on the move. And it provides an incredibly unique opportunity, especially when you haven't got specialist teachers there to support it. So just very quickly, to give you a snippet of the evidence from our work in Malawi at the moment. This is a very typical graph that we get from our research. I could have shown you 3 graphs that look very similar to that. But our studies at the moment in Malawi extend to over 5,500 primary school children. We're looking at the first 2 years of primary school. And we've looked at the effectiveness of this over 4 different samples. And in all of the samples that we've looked at, the effect size of the intervention, so how big the intervention is compared to standard education in Malawi, compared to regular mainstream education, is about 0.35. And that equates to about 3 to 4 months of standard education when the children have accessed the apps for around 14 hours. So within a week, 5 days of sort of 30 minutes or like an hour a day, you're getting a month's gain on standard education. And if you think of children who are on the move, they may not have access to standard education at all, so the effect would be even bigger for children who are not in schools. What's remarkable is that you get very similar results from the UK. In the UK, where we haven't got those issues that I described about the Malawian education, we've got small class sizes, highly qualified teachers, we're getting very similar effect sizes using the same app content in the UK. So that's cross-cultural evidence that this is a consistently reliable finding, both within and across countries of different income status. I think one of the things that our research has shown, which is most exciting to me also, is that with our maths apps, girls learn just as well as boys. And this is incredibly good news, because there's, in Malawi, certainly our baseline data shows that over the first year of schooling, children come in with very, very few skills at all. They basically have no ability in numeracy at all. But over the first year, boys learn math skills much better than girls. So in Standard 2, in their second year of education in Malawi, boys are outperforming girls. When we give them the maths apps, because they learn, boys and girls learn at the same rate, you don't get that gender difference. So it's meaning that girls are having the opportunity to succeed in STEM subjects such as maths, that they're in the typical schooling situation, they're not having that opportunity. And those gender differences that emerge over the first year of schooling stay throughout the entire education system. Entering the university system, looking at girls going into STEM subjects, you've got a huge issue with getting girls into those subjects like maths, science, technology, engineering. And I think if we can boost girls' opportunities at a very early age, empower them to believe that they can do this just as well as boys, and the data shows that they can, then there's no reason why that shouldn't increase throughout the education system if we can maintain those learning opportunities for them. So just to conclude, what I hope I've shown you here is evidence that mobile technologies coupled with innovative, interactive, curriculum-based apps can be highly effective at providing inclusive, child-centred learning. I think these apps have huge potential for refugee children to access consistent and high-quality education at each stage of their journey. I think that it fosters a self-concept of being academically able whilst you're living in an unstable, inconsistent world where you have often been traumatized, and it can empower marginalised children to learn. It can give them the belief that they can learn. And one of the things that teachers say in all of the countries that we've been working with is that when children have worked with these apps, it increases their autonomy for learning. Children believe that they can tackle things that they couldn't tackle before. And our teachers will often say, I see low ability children turning round to the high achievers in the class. They're so aware of it, even at age 5. And they will say, oh no, you don't do it this way, you do it this way because I learnt it in the apps. And if we can install that in children from a really, really early age, then that will have knock-on consequences throughout their education. So apps such as these and mobile technology can offer a sustainable and practical solution to providing effective education in contexts where traditional schooling is not always available or adequate. Thank you for your time.